The trader's hands trembled as he counted the cowrie shells spread across his sleeping mat. 100, 200, 500. More wealth than he had ever seen in his lifetime. And it had all appeared the morning after he spent the night with Zara. He looked at the woman sleeping beside him, her wrapper loose around her body, and fear crawled up his spine like an army of ants. This was not natural. This was not right. But greed, that old serpent, whispered louder than fear. In the small village of Akachi, where the river bent like a woman's hip and cassava grew tall as young men, everyone knew the story of Zara. They knew her before the strangeness came. They knew her when she was just another girl with dreams too big for her small compound. Zara was born under a new moon, the kind of night when even the crickets fell silent. Her mother died, bringing her into the world, and her father, a palm wine tapper named Okonkwo, raised her alone. She was not beautiful in the way that made men turn their heads. Her body was thin, like bamboo stalks after the dry season. Her skin was dark as the richest soil, and her eyes were too wide, giving her the look of someone always startled by life. The village women clucked their tongues when she passed. "That one will struggle to find a husband," they said while pounding yam in their mortars. "Even with a good dowry, what man wants a woman who looks half-starved?" Zara wore simple wrappers of faded cloth, always the same too, washed so many times at the river that the original colors had surrendered to a uniform gray. She carried water on her head with the other girls, but while they laughed and gossiped, she walked in silence, her eyes on the ground. Her father loved her, but his love could not fill her belly or buy her the beaded necklaces other girls wore to festivals. When Zara reached her 20th harvest, desperation sat on her shoulders like a heavy basket. 20 harvests, and not one man had asked her father for her hand. Not one. She watched girls younger than her marry and move to their husbands' compounds, their wrappers bright with new cloth, their waists wrapped in strings of beads. And she remained, unwanted, invisible. It was on the night of the full moon, when the air was thick enough to taste, that Zara walked into the forbidden forest, the place where the old spirits lived, the place where the ancestors whispered warnings. She walked until she found the ancient Iroko tree, its trunk wider than 3 men standing side by side, its roots like the fingers of buried giants reaching up through the earth. And there, as if she had been waiting since the beginning of time, sat an old woman. The woman's skin was wrinkled like dried palm leaves, but her eyes burned with a light that was not natural. She wore a wrapper of deep purple, the color of royalty, though her feet were bare and covered in forest soil. Around her neck hung beads of every color, clicking softly with each breath she took. She smiled when she saw Zara, and in that smile was knowledge of every secret the girl had ever kept. "You came," the old woman said, her voice like wind through dry grass. "Girls like you always come eventually." "I need help," Zara whispered, falling to her knees. "I need to be wanted. I need to be chosen." The old woman's smile grew wider. "And what will you pay for this gift?" "Anything," Zara said, and the word hung in the air between them like smoke. "Anything at all." The old woman reached into the folds of her wrapper and pulled out a small clay pot, no bigger than a child's fist. Inside was oil that gleamed like liquid gold in the moonlight. "Rub this on your skin before any man comes to your mat," she said, "and he will want you. Oh, how he will want you. But more than that," she paused, her eyes glittering. "Every man who sleeps with you will wake to find wealth beyond his dreams. Gold will appear in his compound. Cowrie shells will fill his baskets. His crops will grow double. His livestock will multiply." Zara's heart hammered against her ribs. "What is the price?" "The price?" The old woman laughed, and it sounded like bones rattling in a dried gourd. "The price reveals itself in time, child. The price always reveals itself." Zara took the pot with shaking hands. She did not ask more questions. She should have. But desperation makes fools of the wisest people, and Zara was young and desperate and tired of being invisible. 2 days later, a trader named Amika came through the village. He was not handsome, but he was not cruel either. He had a round belly that spoke of regular meals and a laugh that came easily. When he saw Zara at the market, something in his eyes changed. He could not stop looking at her. He followed her through the market paths, asking her name, asking about her father's compound. That night, with her father away visiting a sick relative in a neighboring settlement, Zara rubbed the oil on her skin. It smelled of flowers that did not grow in any garden she knew. It smelled of sweetness and danger. When Amika knocked on her door, she let him in. What happened that night, she would remember forever. Not because of love or tenderness, but because of the way Amika looked at her, as if she were the most precious thing he had ever touched, as if she were made of starlight and honey, as if he would die without her. When morning came, Amika woke with a shout. His sleeping mat was covered in cowrie shells. His traveling bag was heavy with gold dust. He looked at Zara with eyes wide as clay pots, his mouth opening and closing like a fish pulled from the river. What is this?" he stammered. Zara pretended surprise. "A blessing," she said softly. "The spirits favor you." Amika left that morning, his bag heavy, his mind spinning. And by evening, the entire village knew. The women gathering water at the river spoke of nothing else. "Did you hear about the trader?" one said, adjusting her wrapper. "He spent the night with Zara, and now he is rich as a chief." Another woman laughed, but the sound held no humor. "That girl? The thin one who no one wanted? Something strange is happening." The men at the palm wine bar leaned close, their voices dropping. "Perhaps she has medicine," one suggested. "Perhaps she knows secrets we do not." 3 nights later, another man came. Chidi, a farmer whose fields had been dry for 2 seasons. He had heard the whispers. He had heard the stories. And greed is a powerful rope that pulls even cautious men toward danger. Zara rubbed the oil on her skin. Chidi came to her mat. And when morning arrived, his compound was filled with yams. Fat, perfect yams that had not been there the night before. His dried fields suddenly sprouted green, as if the rains themselves had chosen only his land to bless. The village erupted in gossip. Women stopped their work to discuss it. Men gathered in tight circles, their voices urgent. "She has power," they whispered, "power from the forest spirits." Mothers held their daughters close. "Stay away from that girl," they warned. "What she has is not natural." But the men kept coming. Poor men came, hoping for wealth. Sick men came, hoping the blessing would bring health. Young men came, hoping for success. And they all left rich. Every single one. Gold appeared in their compounds. Their livestock multiplied overnight. Their businesses flourished. Word spread beyond Akachi, to neighboring villages, to settlements 3 days' walk away. Men traveled from distant places, following rumors of the woman whose touch brought fortune. Zara's father's compound filled with gifts. Goats, chickens, bags of rice, cloth so fine it felt like water between the fingers. Suddenly, Zara was not invisible. Suddenly, she was the most desired woman in 10 villages. Men lined up outside her compound, waiting their turn, their eyes hungry with greed, dressed as desire. And Zara? She wore new wrappers now, bright wrappers of red and gold. She wore beads around her waist and neck. She walked through the market with her head high, and women who once mocked her now scattered like frightened birds when she approached. But something was changing. Something she had not noticed at first. Each time a man came to her mat, each time she rubbed the oil on her skin and let them touch her, she felt something leave her body. Not something she could name, not something she could see, but something essential. Like water draining slowly from a calabash with a crack at the bottom. She felt it seeping away, one night at a time. 6 moons passed, then 7, then 8, and the men kept coming. Zara's compound overflowed with wealth she no longer wanted. Gold she could not spend, gifts she could not enjoy. Because the thing that was leaving her was the thing that made life worth living. Joy left first, then hope, then the ability to feel anything at all. She looked in her small bronze mirror one morning and barely recognized herself. Yes, she wore fine wrappers. Yes, she had wealth. But her eyes were empty as abandoned wells. Her skin, though oiled and cared for, seemed to be losing its light from within. She was becoming a hollow thing, a beautiful shell with nothing inside. The villagers began to notice, too. The women whispered with different tones now. "Have you seen her lately?" one said at the river. "She looks strange, like something is eating her from inside." The men who had visited her, now rich beyond measure, spoke in hushed voices at the Palm Wine Bar. "I cannot sleep anymore," one confessed. "Every night I dream of her eyes, those empty eyes." Then came the night that changed everything. A young man named Olumide arrived in the village. He was different from the others. He had heard the stories, but he did not come seeking wealth. He came because his brother had visited Zara 3 moons before, had left rich, and had hanged himself 2 weeks later. Hanged himself with his new silk wrapper, surrounded by all his new wealth. A man who had everything and found it meant nothing. Olumide found Zara in her compound, sitting on a carved wooden stool, staring at nothing. "Why did you do it?" he asked, his voice breaking. "Why did you give my brother wealth that poisoned him?" Zara looked at him, and for the first time in moons, she felt something. She felt shame. "I did not mean—" "You did not mean?" Olumide's laugh was bitter. "The spirits do not give gifts without price. Every man who comes to you pays. And you pay too. Can you not feel it? What you are losing?" His words pierced through the numbness that had wrapped around her heart like thick cloth. Yes, yes, she could feel it. She was losing herself. Piece by piece. Night by night. The thing she had wanted most, to be desired, to be chosen, had become the thing that was destroying her. That night, Zara walked back into the forbidden forest, back to the ancient Iroko tree. The old woman was there, as if she had never left, as if she had been waiting all along. "I want to return it," Zara said, holding out the clay pot, now nearly empty. "Take back your gift." The old woman's smile was sad this time. "Child, do you know what the oil does? It does not make men desire you. It makes them desire wealth through you. You became not a woman, but a path to riches. And each time a man uses you for gain, a piece of your soul feeds the magic. That is the price. That is what you agreed to when you said anything." Zara fell to her knees, her wrapper pooling around her in the dirt. "Then I am lost. I am already empty." "Not yet," the old woman said. "There is one way to break the curse. You must find a man who desires you for yourself alone, not for wealth, not for gain. A man who would choose you even if it meant staying poor. Only true love, freely given, can fill what has been emptied. Only that can break what has been bound." "But how?" Zara wept. "How will I know if a man comes for me or for riches? They all leave rich. They all gain. How will I ever know the difference?" The old woman reached out and touched Zara's cheek with a finger that felt like dried bark. "That, child, is the true test. That is the real price of your greed. You must learn to see what greed made you blind to." Zara returned to her compound that night with a heart heavier than all the gold she had accumulated. She looked at the wealth surrounding her, the cowrie shells, the fine cloth, the livestock, and she understood. This was not abundance. This was a prison. Every piece of gold was a bar. Every gift was a chain. The next morning, she did something no one expected. She gave it all away, every single thing, to the poor, to the widows, to the children with distended bellies. She kept only 2 simple wrappers and moved back into her father's small hut, sleeping on a mat of woven raffia. The men stopped coming. Of course they did. The stories had spread. "Zara is poor again," they said. "She has nothing left to give." And the men who had lined up outside her compound, who had traveled from distant villages, they all turned away. They found other pursuits, other dreams. They forgot her as quickly as they had desired her. Months passed. Zara worked in the cassava fields. She fetched water with the other women. She pounded yam in her mortar. She lived simply and slowly, very slowly, she began to feel something returning. Small things at first: the pleasure of cool water on a hot day, the taste of ripe mango, the sound of children laughing, life seeping back into her like rain into parched earth. Then one day at the market, she saw Olumide, the brother of the man who had died. He was buying yams from a trader, his wrapper simple, his face thoughtful. He saw her and stopped. "You are still here," he said, and it was not a question. "I am still here," she replied. They began to talk, small conversations at first, then longer ones. He told her about his brother, about the grief, about the anger he had carried like a stone in his chest. She told him about the curse, about the emptiness, about the slow return of her soul. He did not run. He did not judge. He simply listened. Weeks turned into months. Olumide came to her father's compound, not with gifts of gold, but with fish he had caught in the river. He helped repair the roof of their hut when the rains came. He sat with her in the evenings, and they talked about everything and nothing. And slowly, carefully, something grew between them that had no name at first, but eventually revealed itself as love. One evening, as the sun set red as palm oil, Olumide took her hand. "I want to marry you," he said. "I have nothing to offer your father but my labor and my loyalty. I have no wealth, no land, no livestock. But I want you, Zara, not for what you might bring me, but for who you are, for your strength, for your honesty, for the way you laugh now, real laughter that comes from deep inside." Zara looked into his eyes and saw no greed there, no hunger for gain, only a man who saw her, really saw her, and she knew. The curse was broken. She rubbed no oil on her skin that night. She needed no magic. When Olumide came to her mat after their simple wedding ceremony, witnessed by the whole village under the light of a full moon, what passed between them was clean and true and wholly theirs. Morning came. Olumide woke. He looked around the small hut. There was no gold, no cowrie shells, no sudden wealth, just Zara beside him, sleeping peacefully, her face finally at rest. And he smiled. He smiled wider than any rich man in any grand compound. The villagers waited for the stories. They waited to hear that Olumide had become rich overnight. But no stories came. Days passed, weeks, months, and Olumide remained exactly what he was, a simple man with a simple life. But he was happy, truly happy, and Zara was whole again. The old women at the market shook their heads. That girl had everything and threw it all away for a poor man, they said. But the younger women, the ones who listened carefully, they understood something deeper. They understood that having everything means nothing if you lose yourself in the getting. Years passed. Zara and Olumide had children, 3 daughters who grew strong and wise. They farmed their small plot of land. They laughed at evening meals. They struggled sometimes, as all people do, but they struggled together. And on quiet nights, when the children slept and the fire burned low, Zara would touch Olumide's face and remember the emptiness she had once felt, the hollow ache of being desired for the wrong reasons. And she thanked the spirits for teaching her the hardest lesson, that the only wealth that matters is the wealth of the soul, and the only desire worth fulfilling is the desire to be loved for exactly who you are. The clay pot she buried deep in the forest, under the roots of the ancient Iroko tree, where no desperate girl would ever find it. And they lived happily ever after. The end.